never thought I'd be the kind of mother whose own children would betray her. But here I am, telling this story to anyone who will listen. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to have that trust shattered in the worst possible way? That's exactly what happened to me, and I have to ask you right now, would you have reacted the way I did? Because when my children stole $47,000 from me using my own credit card, I made a decision that changed everything, and you might be shocked at what I did next. My name is Vivian. I'm 72 years old, and I live in Ohio. This is my story. It all started a few years ago. I had always been a careful woman when it came to money. I worked hard all my life, saved meticulously, and though I enjoyed the occasional treat for myself, I was never extravagant. But I was a mother first, and like many mothers, I wanted to make sure my children never struggled the way I did. When my eldest son and daughter asked if they could have emergency access to my credit card, just in case they ran into some kind of crisis, I didn't hesitate. I trusted them. I trusted that they loved me, and I trusted that they wouldn't do anything foolish. I had no idea how foolish they could actually be. At first, everything seemed normal. They were careful with the card, only telling me about minor things here and there, like a dinner or a small household purchase. I even felt proud that they trusted me enough to ask for help instead of going into debt elsewhere. But then, one afternoon, I got a call from my bank. At first, I thought it was going to be something routine. Maybe a question about a payment, maybe a verification for a transaction. But the person on the other end told me that several charges had been flagged on my account, charges totaling nearly $47,000. My heart literally stopped. I asked them to repeat it. $47,000? On my card? That couldn't be right. There had to be some mistake. I quickly logged into my online banking account, and as I scrolled through the recent transactions, I felt my stomach drop. There were charges from high-end stores I had never even heard of, luxury electronics, designer handbags, even travel bookings. My children had maxed out the card, and they hadn't left a note. They hadn't called to explain. They had just taken what wasn't theirs. I was devastated. But even more than that, I was furious. How could the people I raised, the people I gave everything to, betray me like this? I sat in my kitchen, staring at my laptop, shaking. I knew I had to do something, but I had no idea if I could. They were my children, after all. Could I really take legal action against them? Could I really go to court against my own family? I spent that night thinking about my options. I considered quietly paying off the card to keep the peace, hoping they would feel guilty and repay me eventually. But deep down, I knew that if I gave in, they would only see it as weakness. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I remembered all the sacrifices I had made for them, the late nights working overtime, the money I had saved for their education, the countless times I had put their needs before my own. And now this? $47,000 gone, taken, in secret, with no thought to me or my well-being. I realized something important that night. I might be their mother, but I wasn't going to be their victim. Not this time. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I had never imagined I would need one to go after my own children, but I knew I needed professional help. The lawyer listened to my story, and though he admitted it would be a delicate situation, he assured me that I had every right to take legal action. I remember feeling a strange mix of fear and determination. I was scared about what this would do to my relationship with my children, but I was more determined to stand up for myself. I couldn't just let them get away with it. When I first confronted my son and daughter, I thought they might apologize, or at least try to explain. But instead, they showed up at my door with a lawyer of their own. Can you imagine the shock of seeing the people you love most, sitting there as if preparing to fight you in court? I felt like my world had been turned upside down. They argued that they had assumed the card was available to them, that they thought I would be okay with it, and even tried to paint me as some overbearing parent who had trapped them in a financial situation. I listened quietly, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. They were trying to gaslight me, make me doubt my own judgment, make me feel guilty for daring to demand what was rightfully mine. As the legal proceedings began, I realized just how complicated this would be. There were bank statements, credit card policies, witness testimonies, and endless paperwork. But through it all, I refused to back down. I reminded myself of one thing constantly. I had worked my whole life to be independent and strong. I had built a life on honesty and integrity. And now, at 72, I was about to prove that those values weren't going to be trampled on, not even by my own children. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I went through endless meetings with my lawyer, preparing for court, reviewing evidence and strategizing. My children, on the other hand, seemed increasingly desperate. Their lawyer was trying every trick in the book, but I stayed calm, focused, and meticulous. I knew every detail of my finances, every transaction, every account. I wasn't just fighting for the money. They had taken something far more valuable, my trust and my dignity. And I wasn't going to let that go without a fight. Right before the trial, I remember sitting alone in my living room, looking at the family photos on my walls. I thought about all the birthdays, graduations, holidays, and quiet evenings we had shared. It broke my heart to know that my children could betray me like this. But I also thought about the message I wanted to send, not just to them, but to anyone watching. Age, love, and experience don't make you powerless. You can stand up for yourself, no matter who is against you. And that's when I realized something important. Revenge, in the truest sense, isn't about anger. It's about justice. It's about refusing to be a victim. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and think. If it were your children who had taken tens of thousands of dollars from you, would you have the strength to go to court? Would you forgive, or would you fight? Take a moment and consider that, because what happened next was more than just a courtroom victory. It was a life lesson in courage and self-respect. When the trial began, I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. My children were sitting there, looking uncomfortable, their lawyer pacing nervously. I gave my statement clearly and calmly, recounting every detail of the betrayal, showing the evidence of every transaction, and explaining how I had been misled. I spoke about my life, my work, my sacrifices, and how I had trusted them with my hard-earned money, and then I listened as they tried to defend themselves. They stammered, contradicted themselves, and ultimately, the truth shone through. The judge asked questions, examined the evidence, and when the final decision came, I felt a wave of relief so intense I could barely stand. I won. Every single dollar was returned to me. The court ruled in my favor, recognizing that their actions were a deliberate breach of trust, not a misunderstanding. The aftermath was complicated emotionally. My children were, of course, upset, but I refused to let their anger intimidate me. I didn't gloat. I didn't yell. I simply held my ground. I realized that justice doesn't always feel like victory. It often feels like peace. I had reclaimed not just my money, but my dignity and my sense of security. I learned that age doesn't make you weak, and love doesn't mean you should be taken advantage of. In fact, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is protect yourself, even from those you love most. Looking back now, I see the whole experience as a lesson in courage and self-respect. I know some people might say I was too harsh, or that family should always come first. But I believe that boundaries and accountability are part of love too. By standing up for myself, I taught my children a hard lesson about responsibility, honesty, and respect. And most importantly, I proved to myself that even at 72, I am capable of taking control of my life and demanding justice. So, if you've been betrayed, if you've been taken advantage of, or if someone you trusted has hurt you deeply, remember this: you are never too old, too kind, or too loving to fight for what is right. Trust can be broken, but your integrity doesn't have to be. Don't be afraid to take a stand, to defend yourself, and to demand justice. And to everyone watching, I want you to reflect on this story. How would you have handled my situation? Would you have stayed silent, or would you have fought back? If you were on my side through this whole ordeal, please like this video. And if you want to hear more real-life stories of betrayal, courage, and justice, subscribe for more. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I want to hear what you think. Every story, every reaction, every lesson learned helps someone else know they're not alone. I'll see you all in the next story, and remember, never let anyone, no matter who they are, make you feel powerless. Stand up, speak out, and claim what is rightfully yours.